The series begins with a girl named Jean. At that time, she moves to the city of Seoul to chase her dream of becoming a successful career woman. At first, Jean works as a waitress in a restaurant, but she's really hardworking and does her job quickly. This impresses many customers, even though they might not think she's as pretty as the other waitresses. Right now, Jean is living with her childhood friend Hari. But Hari's life is quite different from Jean's. Hari comes from a wealthy family and has a great job as a hotel manager. She also gets a lot of attention from guys because she's very beautiful. One night, Hari invites Jean to her fancy birthday party at a luxury hotel. Some of the guests are surprised to see that Hari, who seems perfect, has a friend like Jean, who doesn't look as put together. This makes Hari upset because her best friend is being judged by the guests. Not long after, Hari had a little accident and fell into the swimming pool by mistake. Many guys rushed to help her out. Meanwhile, Jean got involved because she accidentally bumped into a guy. Unlike Hari, who got lots of attention from handsome men, nobody came to help Jean. She finally went home all wet, without even saying goodbye to Hari. Since that moment, Jean felt like her life was meant to be a side character, and she didn't think she deserved to be in the spotlight. The next day, Jean was really excited about a job interview at a popular fashion magazine called The Most. But when she got to the magazine's office, she felt unsure of herself because all the other candidates were really smart and had graduated from famous schools. Jean, on the other hand, had graduated from a less well-known school. After the interview, she wasn't feeling very hopeful about getting the internship. When she got home, Jean saw Hari on a date with a guy. Jean reminded Hari not to get involved with a guy who might not be trustworthy. When Hari asked how the job interview went, Jean said that she'd definitely get the job if she looked as beautiful as Hari. Jean admitted that being pretty could make things easier for a woman to achieve her dreams. Some time later, Jean was eagerly waiting for a response to her job application. Instead, she got an email from her childhood friend Song-jun, who now lives in the United States but is coming back to South Korea. There, he invited Jean to meet up. Hari also remembered Song-jun as a chubby and shy kid, so she didn't have high expectations. On the other hand, Jean was excited about the meeting. The day finally came when Jean and Song-jun were supposed to meet. Hari purposely took Jean to the meeting spot. However, when they got to the park, Jean was shocked to see that Song-jun had turned into a handsome man and no longer wore glasses. Sadly, Song-jun didn't recognize Jean and mistook another beautiful girl for her. This made Jean feel insecure, and she didn't want to reveal herself. When Jean came back home feeling sad, Hari asked what had happened. In the end, Jean asked Hari for help in letting Song-jun know the truth because she didn't want to crush his hopes of meeting his childhood friend. Long story short, Jean gave Hari instructions on how to pretend to be her. After meeting Song-jun, Hari told him that she was going to study abroad so that he could forget about her. However, the meeting still made Song-jun happy. He also mentioned that he returned to South Korea to work in the arts and fashion industry. Besides that, Song-jun wanted to meet Jean because he remembered a puzzle from their childhood. Even though Hari said she would study abroad, Song-jun didn't seem eager for their new meeting to end quickly. When Song-jun got back to his apartment, he kept looking at the puzzle, and Jean still had a piece of it. He hoped she still had the puzzle piece he gave her when they separated. On their next meeting, Jean got some exciting news that she got accepted as an intern at The Most magazine. On her first day of work, Jean had an unpleasant incident when she accidentally bumped into a guy named Sinyu. Jean was also put in the company management section, which was led by a man named Chong-mun. As time passed, Chong-mun started to rely on Jean for tasks that weren't really her responsibility. One day, she was asked to bring equipment to the editorial team, which was the most important part of making The Most magazine. At that time, Jean was amazed by this, because she realized how crucial the editorial team was to the magazine. Surprisingly, a manager named Ju Yong thought Jean was a new member of the editorial team, so Jean had to review the document Ju Yong gave her. Luckily, Jean knew a bit about it, so the editorial team decided to hire her. Ju Yong even gave Jean a special desk because she saw her as very capable. However, Jean was shocked when the head of the editorial team, Rara, introduced her new deputy, who turned out to be Song-jun. Soon after, Rara called in Song-jun to help solve some issues at The Most magazine. In that moment, Jean was nervous when she saw Song-jun, so she decided to leave the room. She wanted to avoid Song-jun because she was afraid he would recognize her when they met again. Unfortunately, she had no choice because Chongmun wouldn't take her back in the company management department. As time passed, Sinyu, who worked in the same division as Jin, started noticing that something was off with her behavior. Eventually, Jin found out that Sinyu was the one who recommended her to join the editorial team. Not long after, Juyong called Jin and asked why she was so good at translating articles. Jin explained that she was used to reading magazine articles because her dad had a printing business. Juyong was impressed after she explained what makes a magazine special. As time passed, many female employees started to admire Sung Jun a lot because he was really good-looking. On the other hand, Jin found herself stuck in an elevator with Sung Jun. At that time, she got really scared and had trouble breathing. So Sung Jun thought she was afraid of small spaces. To help calm her down, he sang a song, as he had also been comforted that way by his childhood friend, who happened to be Jin. After they got out of the elevator, Sung Jun had a meeting with Rara to discuss the future of the Most magazine. He was going to become the head in charge of the content to solve some issues. The next day, Jin unintentionally upset Sung Jun by messing up the photo shoot set. Her presence also disrupted the editor-in-chief because she didn't quite fit in with the always fashionable staff at the Most. On the other hand, Hari was invited by her stepmom, Ji-soon, to her father Yang Gil's birthday party. However, Hari doesn't really care about Ji-soon because she's the reason her parents got divorced. Soon after, Hari picked up Jin and gave her some encouragement, knowing that it was a tough day for her. When they got home, Sung Jun sent Jin another email, curious about what she was up to, since she claimed to be studying in London. Hari also intentionally sent Sung Jun a vacation photo to reassure him. There, she also tried to convince Jin that Sung Jun wouldn't recognize her, so there was no need for her to quit her job. However, Jin didn't want to embarrass herself further and planned to resign from her position with Chongmun. The next day, Sung Jun led the editorial team meeting, but his strict attitude and personality made the team members unhappy. He didn't accept any of their ideas, thinking they were outdated. At that time, Jin couldn't come up with any ideas and was even asked to leave the meeting. Sung Jun called her a less-than-smart employee. After Jin left, Sung Jun urged the team to find a solution to restore the Most's former glory. After the meeting ended, Sung Jun noticed his team making bets for lunch expenses. This irritated him because his team seemed more interested in unimportant matters and went quiet when asked for ideas. Sometime later, an editorial team member named Hunt Sool overheard Rara talking about a male colleague on the editorial team who happened to be the CEO's son. Meanwhile, Jin faced another embarrassing moment when Sung Jun almost dropped something right in front of her. Sung Jun saw Jin as inexperienced and unprofessional, and even found her annoying because she shared the same name as his first love. Upon hearing this, Jin was determined to show that she wasn't as bad as Sung Jun thought. She went to the management team and withdrew the resignation letter she had previously given to Chongmun. The next day, Hunt Sool realized the connection between Rara and an editorial team member named Juno, which convinced her that Juno was the CEO's son, the owner of Jinsum Company that owned the Most magazine. On the other hand, Sung Jun had a meeting scheduled at a hotel, but ended up meeting Hari, thinking she was Jin. Hari then took Sung Jun to a nearby restaurant to explain why she was at the hotel. She confessed that she had gone to London, but she received a job offer as a manager at a hotel, so she returned to South Korea. Sung Jun, without suspecting anything, believed Hari's words but felt disappointed because she hadn't told him earlier. Later that evening, Hari planned to talk to Jin about her meeting with Sung Jun. However, Jin was in a bad mood because of Sung Jun's behavior at the office. When she heard this, Hari decided to postpone her plans and let Jin calm down. The next day, Sung Jun was on his way to work and was about to cross the street. While he was busy looking at his phone, he suddenly heard a voice that reminded him of Jin just as he was about to cross the street. Meanwhile, back at the office, Hunt Sool started getting closer to Juno, thinking he was the CEO's son. All the employees were busy preparing materials for a meeting, including Jin. When the meeting began, Sung Jun gave each team 3 minutes to share their ideas. At that time, Jin was taking notes, but she looked confused because everyone was using fashion industry terms that she didn't understand. This also annoyed Sung Jun, and he insulted Jin by suggesting that the HR department was hiring people based on factors other than their abilities. At the meeting, Sinyu teased Jin, who appeared nervous when she was near Sung Jun. There he suspected that Jin was hiding something because she couldn't focus on her work when she was around Jun. This made her seem less capable. Later, Jin handed the meeting results to Jun, but he found her notes useless and even threw them away, which hurt Jin's feelings. In the evening, Hori's boyfriend was waiting for her in front of the house, but she didn't want to see him. Then, a girl who resembled Jin from the past appeared. Her name was Hae-rin, and she turned out to be Jin's younger sister. While they were at home, Jin told Hori about what had happened at work. During their conversation, Hori asked if her had been learning more about her job. This question made Jin realize that she had previously asked Hori for help in understanding fashion and beauty terms. Since then, Jin started trying to study whenever she could. Eventually, Hori praised Jin for her improved knowledge. The next day, Sinuk approached Jin and asked her to treat him to a meal. Meanwhile, Hori went to her father's house to celebrate his birthday. But things turned sour when she had a disagreement with her stepmom, Ji-soon. Their Ji-soon insulted Hori's biological mother, which upset her. Unexpectedly, Hori's father, Yeon-gil, slapped her, thinking she was being disrespectful to her stepmom. Because of that, Hori left her father's house in tears. At first, Hori tried to reach out to Jin, but she was busy having a meal with Sinuk. Then, Hori went to a bar and ended up drinking alone until she got very drunk. Later, she called Jun and told him where she was. A little while later, Jin saw a message from Hori and learned that she was at the bar, as the barmaid had answered Hori's phone. Sometime later, Hori got into an argument with a guy who was bothering her. Jun came to her rescue and took her away. Meanwhile, Jin arrived a bit later, and Hori had already gone to the clinic to treat a wound on her hand. Jin waited anxiously for her friend to return home in front of the house. The next day, Jun was sitting in a cafe and accidentally sat on a book, which turned out to belong to Hae-rin. He was surprised to see Hae-rin's face, which looked very much like Jin's when she was younger. At the same time, Jin entered the cafe and saw Jun talking to her younger sister Hae-rin. Hae-rin had come to the cafe to meet Jin. There, Jin immediately hid because she was afraid of being recognized by Jun. Meanwhile, Jun was convinced that Hae-rin had a connection with Jin due to their striking resemblance. He introduced himself as Jin's friend to Hae-rin. When Hae-rin asked about their relationship, Jun's phone rang, and it was Jin calling. At that moment, Jin lied and said that Jun was needed by Rara. After ending the call with Jin, Jun hurried to the office. Jin then approached Hae-rin and asked her to come home immediately. The next day, the editorial team at the most had a meeting. Jun wasn't happy with the proposals they discussed and didn't like the sentences they used. He wanted them to make a better proposal for the next meeting. Meanwhile, Hori received a call from her dad but was still upset about something that happened yesterday. After work, Hori and Jin went to a park. There, Jin shared the story of her first meeting with Jun. Hori encouraged Jin to keep her disguise secret, which made Jin wonder why Hori was so worried. The next day, Jin remembered Rora's advice to change her appearance. She decided to use makeup to look prettier. When she got to the office, Jun was surprised by her unusual appearance. On the other hand, Juno enters the room and tells Jun that he has a chance to interview a source at the South Korean airport, but they only have 1 hour. Jun quickly asks someone to drive him to the airport, but no one wants to go with him. Surprisingly, Sinuk suggests that Jin should go with Jun. On the way, Jun is so focused on his cell phone that he doesn't hear Jin asking where to take him. After a while, Jun realizes they're going the wrong way because of traffic jams. They have no choice but to take a motorcycle to get there. Eventually, Jun reaches the airport and succeeds in making a deal. However, instead of being thankful, he scolds Jin with harsh words. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Hori and her dad are having dinner at a restaurant. Yeon-gil apologizes for his behavior yesterday but suddenly cancels their dinner plans, which makes Hori sad. To ease her sadness, Hori goes swimming and cries in the water. On her way home, she unexpectedly meets Jun at the gym. Jun decides to go with Hori to comfort his heart. On another note, Sinuk unexpectedly bumped into Jin in a store, and she was all chatty because she had a bit too much to drink. She was upset about how Jun treated her. Surprisingly, Jin let it slip that she and Jun were childhood friends. Meanwhile, Jun took Hori to the park and they played tennis, which made her start to warm up to him. However, Hori chose not to tell Hae-jin about her time with Sung-joon. The next day at the home, Hori remembered a message from Sung-joon advising her to wear warm clothes when leaving the house. Meanwhile, Hun-sul noticed Rora's special treatment of Juno, which made Hun-sul more convinced that Juno was the CEO's son. Because of that, Hun-sul decided to get closer to Juno. In the evening, the Most Magazine's editorial team had a party and Sung-joon was pressured into drinking a lot, which made him pass out when they left the bar. Luckily, Hae-jin and Shin-yug found out about this and took Sung-joon to his apartment. Shortly after, Shin-yug took Sung-joon's access card from his wallet, and they made sure he was resting before going home. A little later, Hae-jin realized she left her cell phone and decided to go back to Sung-joon's apartment to retrieve it. At first, Hae-jin had trouble figuring out the access code for Sung-joon's apartment. Fortunately, she remembered that it was International Left-Handed People's Day, and that was the code. At that time, she planned to grab her phone and leave, but she got distracted by an expensive puzzle encased in glass. However, she was startled by Sung-joon's call, causing her to accidentally break the glass object. Sung-joon asked Hae-jin what she was doing at his place, and she explained that she had brought him home and used his access card to get in. Upon hearing this, Sung-joon told Hae-jin to leave right away and declined her offer to help clean up the broken glass. Hae-jin felt even more embarrassed when she realized she had mixed up her shoes. The next day, Hori is seen picking out some really nice shoes, even though they are too small for her. Later, she went with Hae-jin to Hae-jin's family's house to celebrate Hae-jin's job success. After dinner, Hae-jin found a letter from Sung-joon and a puzzle piece he had given her. She decided to take the piece with her to Seoul. On her way back to Seoul, Hun-sul called Hae-jin to ask for help with her work at the office. Hun-sul admitted that she was busy, even though she was at a beauty salon. Hearing that, Hori got worried about Hae-jin always helping others and suggested that she shouldn't let people take advantage of her. The next day, Hae-jin finished Hun-sul's assignment and accidentally damaged a mannequin in Sung-joon's room when she went to turn off the lights. Unexpectedly, he came back to the office because he had forgotten something. At that moment, Hae-jin had to hide in the cupboard and overheard Sung-joon's conversation with a foreign shareholder. Eventually, Sung-joon found Hae-jin hiding and asked her why she was in his room at night. He made her promise to keep the company's secrets, as the Most magazine was at risk of shutting down if they didn't increase sales within 3 months. After that, Hae-jin left in a hurry, unaware that her puzzle piece had fallen in front of Sung-joon's room. The next day, Sung-joon met Hori at the gym. Hori impressed him by working out hard, and she even gave him a ride home since he didn't have a car. When they arrived at the apartment, the security thought Hori was Sung-joon's girlfriend, which made him blush. However, Hori kept her meeting with Sung-joon a secret from Hae-jin. The next day, Hori became curious about a long-term hotel guest that many receptionists were talking about. She eventually met the guest, who turned out to be Shin-yug. Surprisingly, Shin-yug invited her to get to know him and asked her to say hello if they crossed paths again. Meanwhile, Hae-jin felt awkward when she had to share an elevator with Sung-joon. She also realized that her puzzle piece was missing from her jacket pocket. After searching for it, she found it under a plant pot. However, she accidentally threw it into Sung-joon's room, which panicked her. She tried to come up with an excuse to enter Sung-joon's room, but found the puzzle piece stuck to his shoe. At that moment, she was almost caught by Sung-joon, but Shin-yug helped distract him. There, Shin-yug was aware that Hae-jin had been searching for something important since the morning. Later in the tavern, Shin-yug talked to Hae-jin privately and shared what happened when she was drunk the day before. Hae-jin had been rambling about how she and Sung-joon had been friends since elementary school, and she confessed that Sung-joon was her first love. Hae-jin also admitted that she had kept her true identity a secret from Sung-joon because she felt insecure about her changed appearance, which she didn't consider as beautiful as before. She mentioned that there was someone else pretending to be her in front of Sung-joon for now. Later, Shin-yug joined Hae-jin for a drink when she got drunk. Afterward, he intended to go home, but ran into Hori, who helped him pay for his groceries. They became closer because both of them easily get along with others. Unbeknownst to Hori, Shin-yug is Hae-jin's colleague at work. Similarly, Hae-jin is unaware that Shin-yug is the man living in the hotel room that Hori often talks about to her. After a few days, Hori was driving home from work with a friend, and a song on the radio reminded her of Sung-joon. When she reached the intersection near Hae-jin's office, she spotted him heading home from work. At that moment, Hori wanted to greet him, but he didn't notice her. Her feet were also hurt because she had squeezed them into tight shoes, symbolizing her pushy pursuit of a relationship with Sung-joon, even though he wasn't meant for her. Hari began to realize her mistake and asked Shin-yook for help to forget about Sung-joon. The next day, Hari called Sung-joon and arranged to meet him at night. Meanwhile, Hae-jin had lunch with her friends and also bought a burger for Sung-joon, who was still at the office. As time passed, Sung-joon noticed that Hae-jin was always doing her friend's work, which irritated him because she didn't even pay attention to her own injured finger. In the evening, Sung-joon witnessed a traffic accident that reminded him of the tragic incident when his mother died. He had a panic attack, and the two of them ended up running through busy traffic. Fortunately, Hae-jin saw Sung-joon and rescued him. She took him to the sidewalk, calmed him down, and called his personal driver to ensure he got home safely. Meanwhile, Hari was still waiting for Sung-joon at the restaurant, but he never showed up. Upon learning that Sung-joon was unwell, Hari decided to pay him a visit. Surprisingly, she ignored his offer to pretend to be her fiancé. When she arrived at Sung-joon's apartment, she noticed he had a high fever, so she cooked some soup for him. After waiting for a few hours, Hari didn't want to disturb Sung-joon and decided to go back home. Meanwhile, Hae-jin continued to worry about Sung-joon's condition and asked Shin-yook to help deliver porridge and soup to him. Shin-yook agreed, but with 3 conditions that Hae-jin had to agree to. Hearing that she agreed, and Shin-yook went to Sung-joon's apartment. Surprisingly, he bumped into Hari, although she didn't explain why she was there. However, Shin-yook managed to enter Sung-joon's apartment using the access card he still had. He took care of the unconscious Sung-joon and threw away the soup Hari had made, which he didn't find tasty. The next day, Sung-joon was surprised to find Shin-yook at his place, even wearing his underwear. Shin-yook explained that he couldn't bear to see his sick friend, so he wanted to make sure Sung-joon recovered. When Sung-joon got to the office, he noticed that Hae-jin had caught a cold because it had rained the previous night, and he felt guilty about it. Meanwhile, Hae-jin received a message from Shin-yook, saying that he had completed his task. At the same time, Hari got a message from Sung-joon, mistakenly thinking that the porridge he ate last night was made by her. Long story short, Hae-jin's colleague felt uncomfortable because she was worried about getting the flu. This also made Sung-joon feel bad, since he was the one who inadvertently made Hae-jin sick. He decided to buy medicine for her, but before he could give it to her, Shin-yook had already done so. In the afternoon, Hari invited Sung-joon to have coffee near the office. Sung-joon was surprised that Hari now seemed to enjoy the rain, even though Hae-jin used to dislike it when she was a child. On the other hand, Hae-jin didn't expect much attention from Sung-joon, as he placed onions on the table to help her recover from her illness. After that, she took some medicine to continue working overtime, but she looks very tired and unfocused while trying to complete her tasks for the day. At that time, Sung-joon noticed this and felt sorry for her. He offered his hand so Hae-jin could lean on it. However, Hun-sul suddenly appeared wearing a mask, which surprised Sung-joon and made him look silly in front of Hae-jin. However, Hae-jin's sleepiness didn't end there. While waiting for the bus, she looked extremely tired, so Sung-joon decided to keep her company. Unfortunately, Sung-joon faced some bad luck as his car got towed due to careless parking. The next day, Sung-joon sought help from a psychiatrist for his panic attacks. The psychiatrist advised him not to stress and to let go of the burdens in his heart. Besides dealing with the loss of his mother, Sung-joon was also haunted by memories of someone he knew 15 years ago. However, that person had changed a lot now. The psychiatrist advised him to forget the past and focus on the present. On the other hand, Hari meets Shin-yook and confides in him about feeling guilty for Hae-jin. She wants to forget about Sung-joon even though she has feelings for him. However, Shin-yook's words only strengthen Hari's belief that she is the right person to get his love. The next day, Hari discovers puzzle pieces in Hae-jin's room and takes them to convince Sung-joon that he still remembers their shared memories. After meeting Sung-joon, Hari feels guilty because she feels she has betrayed Hae-jin, who has been a true friend from the beginning, especially when she was going through family problems. The following day, Hae-jin substitutes for Ju-young on a business trip with 3 others, including Sung-joon. Meanwhile, Hun-sul brings her own car because she wants to be alone with Juno. She also informs Sung-joon that he and Juno cannot travel together and will catch up with them later. In the end, Sung-joon and Hae-jin end up traveling in the same car. During the trip, Hae-jin tries to lighten the mood to avoid awkwardness, But Sung-joon remains serious as he has a lot on his mind. Then, they stop at a restaurant and Sung-joon orders a lot of food, intending to treat Hae-jin. Hae-jin had previously mentioned to Sung-joon that the restaurant was expensive, but Sung-joon insists that money is not an issue for him. Unbeknownst to Sung-joon, he left his wallet at the office. Meanwhile, back at the office, Shin-yug feels lonely because there are no coworkers he can play pranks on, except for Hae-jin. There, Hae-jin enjoys a meal from a seller who claims to serve high-quality beef. However, when it's time to pay, Sung-joon realizes he forgot his wallet. He hesitates to borrow money from Hae-jin because she only has a small amount in her account. At that time, the restaurant owner gets increasingly frustrated, thinking they are trying to get a free meal. Hae-jin tries to contact her office colleague, but the colleague believes the restaurant owner is a scammer trying to extort money. In the end, Hae-jin and Sung-joon have to work to pay for their meal, which includes tasks like cleaning cow dung in the cow pen. Sung-joon becomes irritated as he has to do the most unpleasant task of his life. Afterward, he asks Hae-jin to keep his experience a secret. Shortly after, Hae-jin panics because she loses her employee card while cleaning the cow pen. She values this card so much that she's even willing to search through a pile of dirt. Seeing her distress, Sung-joon can't help but secretly assist Hae-jin and eventually finds her employee card. On their way back, Sung-joon mentioned that he also had something valuable, a puzzle that Hae-jin had accidentally broken some time ago. Upon hearing this, she quickly apologized to Sung-joon. After a little while, they arrived at a stunning beach. Hae-jin contacted Hari and asked her to send some money, as Hari was aware that Hae-jin was with Sung-joon. Meanwhile, Hun-seul experienced an unfortunate incident during their journey, as she suddenly had a stomachache. She had planned to spend some alone time with Juno, but ended up having to deal with the embarrassment of finding a place to urinate in an inappropriate location. Besides that, she sprained her leg, which led Juno to carry her back to the car. On the other hand, Sung-joon was impressed by Hae-jin's creative input and ideas. He had never expected her to have such innovative thinking. During this moment, he also opened up about his childhood, sharing that he had been bullied when he lived in the United States. However, he found strength in the monthly letters from South Korea, which were none other than the ones sent by Hae-jin. Actually, Sung-joon secretly snapped a picture of Hae-jin when she looks very natural, unlike many girls who focus more on their looks and status. During dinner, Sung-joon's habits reminded Hae-jin of a moment from 15 years ago. Hae-jin also remembered that Sung-joon didn't like peanuts. Their conversation felt warm because Hae-jin understood Sung-joon's preferences. Sung-joon felt like he had found someone who shared his tastes, from music to TV shows and more. As his character seemed unchanged, Hae-jin gathered the courage to reveal her identity as his first love, who used to send him letters. However, their plan was interrupted by the sudden arrival of Shin-yug. At the time, Sung-joon had to tag along with Hae-jin and Shin-yug for a drinking session. He was somewhat annoyed by Shin-yug, who teased the very innocent Hae-jin. After a while, Sung-joon fainted from drinking too much. Soon after, Shin-yug took him to the hotel where he was staying and noticed the photos on Sung-joon's camera. He was surprised to see that Sung-joon had taken more pictures of Hae-jin and realized that Sung-joon might be developing feelings for her. After coming back from a business trip, Hae-jin began to pay more attention to Sung-joon, even preparing lunch for him. Meanwhile, the entire editorial team was getting ready for a photo shoot with a famous model. Soon after, Hae-jin bumped into Sung-joon and mentioned that she had something important to tell him after the photo shoot. Seeing this, Shin-yug felt jealous and didn't want Hae-jin to get closer to Sung-joon. So he invited Hae-jin to have a meal together and confessed that he really liked her. However, Hae-jin thought Shin-yug was just joking. On his way home, Shin-yug saw Sung-joon with a girl who turned out to be the hotel manager where he was staying, and it was Hari. He realized that the person claiming to be Hae-jin in front of Sung-joon was actually Hari. At that moment, Hari was determined to kiss Sung-joon, but Shin-yug didn't want to hurt Hae-jin and immediately took her away. Meanwhile, Hari expressed her desire to be more than just friends with Sung-joon. After knowing about all of that, Shin-yug actually wanted to tell Hae-jin that Hari seemed to be having a secret relationship with Sung-joon. However, he couldn't bring himself to say it because he could see how much Hae-jin cared for Hari. That night, Sung-joon invited Hari to reminisce about their past, but it made Hari uncomfortable. She pleaded with Sung-joon to forget the past and look forward to a happy future with her. On the other hand, Hori decided to keep everything a secret for just 2 more months. After that, she planned to tell Song-joon everything. The next day, Shin-yook continued to win Hae-jin's heart, and they became very close. Hae-jin didn't mind being carried by Shin-yook to hide her torn pants. Meanwhile, Hori waited for Song-joon at the cinema, because there was a movie she really wanted to watch. Unexpectedly, Song-joon had a minor accident when he saw Shin-yook and Hae-jin on the side of the road. This made him late for their cinema date. Hori was worried about his condition, but he reassured her and promised not to make her anxious again. Afterward, Song-joon asked Hori to watch his favorite movie with him. However, he didn't enjoy their time together at all, and he couldn't even focus on the movie's plot, which left Hori feeling disappointed. Sometime later, Hae-jin was overjoyed because her name was now on the Most magazine's editorial team. When Song-joon returned home from the bookstore, he had a strange feeling when he saw Hae-jin at the crosswalk. Her words reminded him of his childhood friend whom he missed dearly. As time passed, Song-joon's workload made him become more stern. He didn't hesitate to scold employees who weren't performing well. During this time, Hae-jin was assigned the task of taking care of a dress for a model. However, Han-sul told her to do something else. Meanwhile, Shin-yook knew that Hae-jin planned to reveal her true identity to Song-joon. So he met with Hori to tell her about it and told her to confess about her real identity, thinking it would be better if Song-joon heard it from her directly. Upon hearing that, Hori couldn't stop thinking about what Shin-yook had told her, so she decided to meet with Song-joon. When she returned to the studio, a photo shoot was in progress, and Song-joon was surprised to see Hae-jin's hair turn very curly in the rain. It reminded him of his childhood friend, who had a similar unique trait. This made Song-joon even more curious about Hae-jin. However, he still had doubts because his first love, Hae-jin, was very intelligent and never did anything careless like the current Hae-jin. A little while later, Song-joon was shocked when a dress for the photo shoot got torn, causing the model to cancel the shoot. He got angry with Hae-jin, who was responsible for the dresses, and accused her of causing problems at work. Without hesitation, he decided to fire Hae-jin right then and there. However, it turned out that one of the models had tried on the dress without permission, and Hae-jin was innocent. Her office friends felt sorry for her, as she lost her job due to an unfair situation. Hae-jin later talked to Hori about the incident at the office, but Hori apologized without explaining the details of why she felt guilty, leaving Hae-jin confused. The next day, Hae-jin's friends missed her a lot because she was really helpful during their school project. Meanwhile, Hae-jin was busy looking for a job because she needed money right away. When they were discussing the theme for the next magazine edition, Song-joon agreed with an idea suggested by Shin-yook. Surprisingly, it turned out that the idea wasn't entirely Shin-yook's cause. Hae-jin had actually come up with it. Shin-yook also thought it was unfair that Song-joon had fired Hae-jin, and he suspected that he might have feelings for Hae-jin, and he admitted that he liked her too. The following day, Shin-yook went to Hae-jin's house to convince her to come back to work. However, Hae-jin continued to refuse. So he offered her a job as his personal assistant because he had to document the beautiful streets in Seoul for a journalism assignment. In the evening, Hae-jin met with Chongmun because he had promised to help her find a job through a contact. She really hoped to receive good news from him the next day. Unbeknownst to her, Song-joon continued to follow her to persuade her to return to the company. After a meeting, Hae-jin told him she wouldn't come back, but she allowed her concept to be used by the Most magazine. The next day, the job offer from Chongmun was cancelled, which left Hae-jin feeling confused because she had previously turned down Song-joon's request. But now Hae-jin was in a tough spot as she needed money to help her dad's struggling business. Reluctantly, she contacted Song-joon, and she also decided to return to work at the Most magazine. What surprised everyone was that Hae-jin had a new hairstyle, changed the way she dressed, and started wearing makeup. At first, Hae-jin's friends didn't even recognize her because her transformation was so dramatic. Han-sul, in particular, now respected Hae-jin more and felt guilty about what had happened the day before. They all got together to plan the special anniversary edition of the Most magazine. Song-joon liked Hae-jin's idea of focusing on unsung heroes behind the scenes. After the meeting, Song-joon gave Hae-jin a new employee card, recognizing her as an important member of his team. A few days later, Song-joon tried to visit Hori at her hotel because he couldn't reach her. However, Hori always avoided this, not wanting Song-joon to discover her true identity. Instead, they agreed to meet at a cafe, but when they got there, Hori couldn't find the courage to reveal the truth. In fact, she had prepared a letter with her confession in it. Not too long after that, Sinuk accidentally saw Hari fainting at the mini-market. He rushed her to the hospital. The doctor explained that Hari was very stressed and hadn't been eating regularly, which had led to stomach problems and her fainting. When Hari woke up, Sinuk advised her to be honest with Sung-joon, especially since Hari knew about Hae-jin's childhood love story with him. However, Hari also had feelings for Sung-joon as her first love, making it hard for her to share the truth. When Hari returned home from the hospital, she was touched by Hae-jin's caring gesture of making crab soup for her. It reminded her of the past when Hae-jin used to visit her and provide the attention she didn't receive from her own family. Her cooking even tasted like Hari's mom's. Hari promised to always be good to Hae-jin and love her deeply. But now, Hari was actually betraying Hae-jin. The next day, Hae-jin went to work looking more stylish. She explained that after several months of working, she had managed to pay off her student loan and buy new clothes. Later, Sinuk learned that Hae-jin had received an employee card from Sung-joon, which made him feel competitive. He gave Hae-jin a bag as a celebration of her return. Initially, she hesitated because it was expensive, but eventually, she accepted it because Sinuk insisted. The next day was the Most Magazine's birthday event, and all the teams were ready to welcome the invited guests, many of whom came from other countries. Just a few minutes before the opening ceremony, Sung-joon hadn't arrived yet, and it was raining heavily. Hae-jin started to worry because she remembered that Sung-joon had a hard time driving in the rain due to a childhood trauma. At that time, everyone was getting anxious because they needed to start the event, but Sung-joon was still missing. Suddenly, Rara stepped up and took over Sung-joon's role on stage. At first, it didn't seem convincing, but her words touched everyone's hearts in the end. Soon after, Hae-jin felt relieved when Sung-joon finally arrived at the event in good condition. He apologized to Rara for causing panic. A few days later, Judong wanted to give Hae-jin the chance to write an article. At first, Hae-jin didn't think she was skilled enough for the job because she had only revised articles by other authors before. But Sinuk encouraged her to believe in her abilities. Eventually, Hae-jin told Juyong that she would start writing. As time passed, Sung-joon seemed to be getting closer to Hae-jin. When they discussed a painting at a bus stop, Hae-jin even laughed when she remembered Sung-joon's chubby childhood. In their conversation, Sung-joon hoped that Hae-jin would make the most of the opportunities coming her way. On the other hand, Hari looked really tired after work, so Sinuk invited her to have a relaxing evening by going for a ride on his motorbike. Sinuk also asked Hari to keep a secret from Hae-jin if he happened to stay at the hotel. Meanwhile, back at home, Hae-jin couldn't stop thinking about what Sung-joon had said about her chance to write an article. She also remembered winning a writing competition when she was in high school. The next day, Juyong provided Hae-jin with the materials she needed for writing. For several days, Hae-jin worked really hard to create a perfect piece of work. Then one day, Hae-jin was scheduled for an interview with a writer. Juyong even lent her car to make it easier for Hae-jin to get to the location. However, something went wrong because Juyong's car suddenly started spewing thick smoke. Meanwhile, at the office, Juyong realized she had given the wrong car keys to Hae-jin. Instead, Hae-jin had taken her friend's car, which broke down and had to be taken to a repair shop. When Sinuk heard about this, he hurried to catch up with her on his motorbike. At the same time, Sung-joon, upon hearing the news about Hae-jin, grew very worried. He even read the news for any accidents near Hae-jin's destination. Long story short, Sung-joon was shocked to learn of an accident near where Hae-jin was, and he quickly asked a police officer about her whereabouts, fearing that she might be the victim. As soon as Sung-joon saw that Hae-jin was perfectly fine, he felt a huge sense of relief and immediately gave her a warm hug. At that moment, Sinuk, watching from across the street, felt a deep sadness. After making sure that Hae-jin was safe, Sinuk decided to leave. In reality, Sinuk's journey to reach Hae-jin had been really tough because he had a small accident earlier. Sung-joon also offered to take Hae-jin home, but things got quite awkward between them after the hug. When they reached Hae-jin's place, she was determined to reveal her true identity. She ran confidently towards Sung-joon's apartment. However, when she arrived, she was met with a painful truth that Hari was still pretending to be her. Also, she could be with Sung-joon. At that moment, Hae-jin gave up on meeting Sung-joon. On her way home, Hae-jin felt lost and didn't know what to do, realizing that her best friend also loved the person she loved. Unintentionally, she reached the last bus stop without even noticing. The only person Jin wanted to talk to was Sinyu, but he was in the hospital, getting treatment for his injuries. Despite this, he still met her and tried to look fine. He followed her in a fancy car, but Sinyu admitted that the car belonged to his friend. At that moment, Jin told herself that she could only wait for Ri to explain why she was still pretending to be her in front of Sung-jun. Not wanting to see Jin feeling sad, Sinyu quickly offered to take her home. Once they arrived home, Sinyu asked Jin how she would feel if Sung-jun found out the truth. Jin replied firmly that she would still love Sung-jun like her first love. Later, when she went inside, Jin saw her refixing her shoes, but she tried to stay calm and act as if she didn't know anything. The next day, Jin unexpectedly ran into Sung-jun. However, instead of talking about the previous night's incident when he hugged her, he invited her for coffee at a cafe. Jin tried to avoid the situation. When she saw Sinyu outside the cafe, Jin used that as an opportunity to leave Sung-jun. Back at the office, Jin continued to avoid Sung-jun. However, during a meeting, they couldn't help stealing glances at each other. With a bit of nervousness, she eventually entered Sung-jun's office to hand over the meeting notes. During a break, Jin was looking for Sinyu. When she called him, a nurse answered and told her that Sinyu was in the hospital. Jin rushed to the hospital and asked about Sinyu's condition. However, Sinyu didn't want to reveal that he had an accident while trying to meet Jin the previous day. Instead, he used the opportunity to act a bit needy and asked Jin to feed him. Later, Rara was in a panic because Sung-jun had left the clothes he needed at the office. She asked if someone could deliver the clothes, but nobody was willing to do it. Eventually, Jin, who had just arrived, volunteered for the task. In the evening, Jin gave the clothes to a security guard at Sung-jun's apartment. She had the chance to meet Sung-jun but intentionally avoided him. However, Sung-jun actually invited Jin to stop by for coffee to clarify his behavior, which seemed too intense the day before. He'd explained that he had been worried about Jin personally. At first, Sung-jun used to get annoyed and angry with Jin. But over time, he started to realize that Jin meant a lot to him. Jin, hearing this from Sung-jun, felt embarrassed and accidentally spilled coffee on her clothes. Then Sung-jun lent her some clothes, but Jin chose to go home by herself and declined his offer to take her home. On the other hand, Sinyu discovered that Jin was meeting Sung-jun at his apartment, which made him worried and a bit jealous. Without thinking twice, he followed Jin. A little while later, Sinyu reached Sung-jun's apartment and entered without permission to check on Jin. This annoyed Sung-jun, who asked about Sinyu's relationship with Jin, but Sinyu didn't want to answer. Afterward, Sinyu bumped into Ri in front of the mini-market. He was afraid of losing Jin and told Ri that Jin already knew about her and Sung-jun's relationship. Upon knowing that Ri felt guilty and couldn't stop thinking about what Sinyu had said about Jin not being disappointed at all. In fact, Jin had deliberately given Ri time to explain things to her. When Ri got home, she explained to Jin that she was going to end everything, and expressed her gratitude for Jin giving her the opportunity to talk about why she was still with Sung-jun. The next day, Jin had an interview with the book author, and everything went smoothly. Afterward, she visited a painting exhibition to reminisce about her memories with Sung-jun. Unexpectedly, he was also there, and they no longer felt awkward around each other. After that, Ri called Sung-jun and asked to meet that night because she had something to discuss. Back at the office, Jin finally learned that Sinyu had an accident because he wanted to follow her out of town the previous day. She asked him about it, and Sinyu honestly admitted that he had followed her because he was worried something bad might happen to her. Surprisingly, Sinyu took the opportunity to confess his feelings and ask Jin to be his girlfriend. On the other hand, Ri was saying goodbye to hotel guests when she was surprised to see Sung-jun. Even more surprising, he already knew her real identity and name after a meeting at Ri's workplace. Feeling anxious, Ri tried to explain, but Sung-jun left before she could. He also tried to contact Jin, who was with Sinyu at that time. At the same time, Sinyu asked Jin not to meet Sung-jun. However, she apologized to Sinyu because she had to meet her first love, Sung-jun. Then they met at a street crossing near the office and rekindled their love, which had been put on hold in the past. Sung-jun also apologized for taking so long to recognize Jin all this time. At that moment, they held hands by the Han River. There, Jin explained that the reason she hid from Sung-jun when they first met was because she lacked confidence. She didn't have a job at the time, and she felt her appearance was unattractive. But Sung-joon didn't mind and didn't think about the past. What mattered most was that they were together again. However, Hae-jin knew that Sung-joon hadn't heard any explanation from Hari, as she had discovered the lie before Hari admitted it. Hae-jin was concerned and rushed home to see Hari. However, Hari tried to hide her sadness, acting as if she didn't care whether Sung-joon would hate her. Hae-jin saw torn pieces of a letter thrown away by Hari and began to piece them back together. Then she followed Hari, who was crying. Hari regretted losing her first love, and Hae-jin finally understood Hari's feelings for Sung-joon. The next day, Hae-jin tried to distance herself from Sung-joon for various reasons, so that he could think about Hari again. This left Sung-joon feeling disappointed, because the previous night they had been like lovers, but now she was acting differently. In fact, Hae-jin admitted that she no longer had any feelings for Sung-joon. On the other hand, Han-sul finally learned that Juno's father wasn't a CEO, but just a businessman in Gangnam. In the evening, Hae-jin saw Hari going out with a man to try to ease her heartache. Hae-jin brought her home, feeling angry because Hari was pretending to be fine when she should have been honest with Hae-jin. However, Hari questioned Hae-jin about her actions, and they ended up arguing. The next day, Hae-jin decided to move out of Hari's place so that Hari wouldn't have to leave her own home. In the evening, Hae-jin returned to her parents' house. Meanwhile, Sung-joon continued to think about Hae-jin's feelings and called her to arrange a meeting. However, when he called, Hae-ring answered the phone. A little while later, Sung-joon surprised Hae-jin by showing up at her house. Her parents really liked Sung-joon and seemed to accept him as a potential partner for Hae-jin. Sung-joon was happy to meet Hae-jin's father, who had been his neighbor in the past. Sung-joon even drank wine with Hae-jin's father, even though he couldn't handle alcohol and ended up passing out. Hae-jin looked at the unconscious Sung-joon, and shortly after, he regained consciousness and asked her to talk outside. He wanted an explanation for why Hae-jin had suddenly distanced herself from him. Hae-jin explained that she had been his first love in the past, and that Hari also had strong feelings for him now. In response, Sung-joon emphasized that he didn't care about Hari, and that he could only love Hae-jin because feelings cannot be forced. The following day, the editorial team at the Most magazine was shocked to hear that Sinyu would be leaving the company. However, they received some good news as their sales reached a new high, and they ranked as the second-best magazine. On a different note, Hari received a message from her biological mother, who was going to leave South Korea soon. She also remembered meeting her mother the previous night, which had made her quite happy. Meanwhile, in his office, Sung-joon was going through employee profiles and discovered that Sinyu had been staying in a hotel. When Sung-joon tried to confirm this, the hotel staff hesitated to reveal the guest's identity. Eventually, Sung-joon met with Sinyu and informed him that the Most magazine might be discontinued soon, asking Sinyu not to leave. At the same time, Hae-jin was worried because Hari had left her house. To add to her concern, Hae-jin received a call from the hotel where Hari used to work, informing her that Hari had resigned. After hearing that, Hae-jin rushed to the airport, convinced that Hari was going to Japan with her mom. After an exhausting search at the airport, Hae-jin couldn't locate Hari. She was in tears, calling out her best friend's name. Then, to her surprise, Hari suddenly appeared and approached Hae-jin, leading to an immediate and joyful reunion. Hae-jin was overjoyed that Hari hadn't left, but had only accompanied her mother to Japan. Finally, they made up, and Hari explained why she had stopped working, cause she felt that her job and career is from her father's connections. Hari didn't want to rely on her family and was determined to work hard for her own future. Meanwhile, Sung-joon looked stressed because his job hadn't met its sales targets, and he was worried about the potential closure of the Most magazine. Then he went to see Hae-jin just to see her face and lift her spirits. Hae-jin, however, was worried because she felt that Sung-joon was carrying the burden alone to keep the Most magazine from closing. After a heartwarming reunion, Sung-joon returned home and was surprised to find Sinyu there. Sinyu had come to offer many ideas to help save the Most magazine. Although only one of Sinyu's ideas could be accepted by Sung-joon, he was happy that Sinyu was willing to return to the company. The next day, the members of the Most editorial team were overjoyed by Sinyu's return. Surprisingly, Sung-joon suddenly had a nosebleed due to exhaustion. Seeing this, Hae-jin rushed to his room with some tea to help stop the nosebleed. On the other hand, Han-sul seems avoiding Juno during break time, as she no longer wanted to date him after learning that he wasn't from a wealthy family. Everyone was lively and didn't pay much attention to Sung-joon, who was resting. There, Hae-jin kindly offered to treat them all to lunch and urged them to go eat. Afterwards, she thoughtfully gave a blanket to Sung-joon. At that time, Si-nook accidentally witnessed this. He later took Hae-jin to a cafe, and they had a heart-to-heart conversation. Hae-jin clarified that she sees Si-nook as an older brother, not a boyfriend. However, he playfully teased Hae-jin and continued to pursue her, showing he wasn't ready to give up. This made Hae-jin somewhat uncomfortable. In the evening, Hae-rin and Hari were talking about Sung-joon's return. Hae-jin quickly covered Hae-rin's mouth, not wanting Hari to feel sad. At that time, Hari tried to remain patient and not let her emotions take over. The following day, Hari gave Hae-jin a pair of shoes as a gift, as she had promised. Initially, Hae-jin hesitated, feeling it was inappropriate to wear such beautiful shoes. However, Hari insisted, saying that the shoes would also lead Hae-jin to good places. Hari hoped for a happy ending to her relationship with Sung-joon. In that moment, Hae-jin was super excited when she put on the shoes that Hari had given her. While she was waiting for the bus, Hari offered her a ride and said she wanted to start a new life by selling her car. When Hae-jin got to the office, she wanted to meet Sung-joon, but he had to leave for a meeting, and she couldn't catch up with him. At the office, Hae-jin overheard Ju-young talking to Sung-joon on the phone. She found out that Ju-young was going to Jeju Island and would be back in the afternoon. Then Ju-young asked Hae-jin to return a document to Sung-joon's room, and Hae-jin discovered that Sung-joon had secretly painted something. Her feelings for him grew stronger, so she rushed to the airport to wait for him, but he didn't show up. Turned out, Sung-joon had collapsed at another airport gate due to exhaustion. In the evening, Hae-jin learned that Sung-joon was in the hospital and went to see him. She was so worried that she ignored Si-nook's calls. She couldn't find a taxi, and that's when Si-nook offered her a ride. He knew that she wanted to visit Sung-joon. At the hospital, Hae-jin felt guilty because she didn't understand Si-nook's feelings, but he told her to go without looking back. This means that Si-nook has decided to stop pursuing Hae-jin. When Hae-jin visited Sung-joon in the hospital, Rara unexpectedly came to see him too. This made Hae-jin very anxious, so she quickly hid in a closet. After Rara left, Sung-joon and Hae-jin started kissing again and spent time together. Once Sung-joon was discharged from the hospital, he started acting differently. He wasn't as stern as before, which made his friends think he might be in love. On the other hand, Si-nook teased Hae-jin in the elevator, which annoyed her. But he did it because he wanted them to remain friends, even though Hae-jin liked Sung-joon more. When they went to a meeting, Hae-jin asked Sung-joon to act normal to avoid suspicion from their friends who noticed his change in attitude, like him smiling and whistling at Hae-jin. In the evening, Sung-joon took Hae-jin home. Hae-jin's family was happy to see Sung-joon and even invited him to eat and take photos. On his way home, Sung-joon met Hari, and although they were awkward, they talked in a park. At that time, they tried to fix their past issues, and Hari apologized for her actions. She thanked Sung-joon for making her feel loved and happy. After some time had passed, Sung-joon showed up at Hae-jin's house with some bread. They had a lovely time together, chatting in the car, and eventually they fell asleep and woke up the next morning. When they got up, they hurriedly prepared for work. When Hae-jin arrived at the office, she greeted the management department led by Changmun, as she would be returning to her team in the next 3 weeks. Meanwhile, in the editorial team's office, they had a guest who appeared to be a messenger from the head office. The man reminded Sung-joon that the Most magazine might have to close if it couldn't reach its sales target. Not only that, Sung-joon and his team's reputation at work would suffer. This got everyone curious because it was the first time someone so important had visited their office. Rumors about the possible closure of the Most started to circulate, causing panic among the staff. Upon knowing that Ju-young also felt let down by Sung-joon because he had kept this problem a secret. As a matter of fact, Ju-young had worked at the Most for over 10 years. Ju-young decided to leave the office because he felt Sung-joon was being selfish and keeping this issue to himself. One by one, other staff members chose to follow Ju-young's lead. On her way home, Hae-jin intentionally waited for Sung-joon and offered to drive him home. She was concerned that Sung-joon must have had a tough day and might be tired. On the other hand, the editorial team was discussing the new deputy CEO. Hun-sul was working hard to uncover the true identity of this person, and she was starting to suspect either Si-nook or Pum-ho. Hun-sul even playfully invited Si-nook to dinner, but he continued to ignore her in his amusing way. Meanwhile, Jin was getting worried that the Most magazine might close, which would mean Sung-joon would have to return to New York. At that time, Sin-yook tried to offer encouragement, reminding everyone that it wasn't over yet. Some time later, Juna was feeling heartbroken because Hunt-sul had ended their relationship on her own. He also asked Hunt-sul if it was okay for him to go on a blind date, as his friends had set him up to meet a girl. At first, Hunt-sul tried not to pay much attention, but she suddenly remembered Juno's genuine concern. In the end, she couldn't let go of Juno again. A little while later, Sung-joon made a decision for the team to publish an article that was already written, so they didn't need to worry about interviews. However, they were concerned that their articles might no longer be interesting. Soon after, Rara appeared and motivated the team to stay positive, as she believed that a miracle could still happen. Once all the articles were ready, Sung-joon took them to the printing department and then invited the whole team to dinner and a party. That night, they all had a great time, showcasing their singing talents and being very happy. After the party ended, Sung-joon quietly left, leaving everyone behind. Jin, who was worried, followed him and discovered that Sung-joon had returned to the office. There, Sung-joon silently reflected on the memories and hard work of the editorial team. He didn't want to lose such a close-knit team. Jin, who had followed him to the office, looked very concerned because she realized that Sung-joon had been fighting alone to protect the Most all this time. From a distance, Sin-yook watched them with jealousy, but he eventually left because he couldn't do anything. The next day, Sin-yook called Jin urgently for something important. At that moment, Jin panicked and followed him, feeling lonely. Sin-yook invited Jin to have a meal and enjoy some rides at an entertainment venue. All of his actions made Jin feel as if he might go far away and she might not see him again. On the following day, the ceremony for the new deputy CEO was happening. Everyone was eagerly awaiting to find out who this man really was. Meanwhile, Sung-joon received news from the printing department that the Most magazine had canceled printing due to a revision. Surprisingly, Sung-joon received an email from Writer 10, saying he was willing to do an interview. Sung-joon immediately rushed to meet Writer 10, only to discover that the man was Sin-yook. In the main building of Jinsung Company, all the employees were surprised when Poon-ho was introduced as the new deputy CEO. Meanwhile, Sung-joon still couldn't believe that Sin-yook was the real Writer 10. However, Sin-yook kept trying to convince Sung-joon that he was the mysterious 10 writer. Sung-joon asked if Sin-yook was ready to reveal his secret to save the Most magazine, but Sin-yook avoided answering and instead urged him to write an article about himself. Meanwhile, the editorial team at the Most still had doubts about Poon-ho being the deputy CEO because he had hidden his true identity all along. However, Poon-ho insisted that he would remain the same and wouldn't forget his friends on the editorial team. Soon after, Jin called Sung-joon to share the news about Poon-ho, but Sung-joon seemed normal because he was deep in thought. In the end, Sung-joon decided not to publish the article about Sin-yook and continued with the previous article the next day. The next day, the Most magazine's special 20th anniversary edition was finally published. However, Sung-joon was surprised to find that 10, also known as Sin-yook, had an article featured in the magazine. It turned out that Sin-yook suspected Sung-joon might not release it, so he went to the printing department by himself with the results of his exclusive interview. At the same time, Jin was still busy searching for the missing Sin-yook, while Sung-joon received a message from Sin-yook, who was waiting for him somewhere. On the other hand, Hori was shocked to discover that her hotel's VIP customer was actually a famous writer. She tried to get in touch with Jin to confirm this. Later, Sung-joon met Jin and informed her that Sin-yook had disappeared. There, Sung-joon also gave Jin the final recording from Sin-yook. In the recording, Sin-yook explained that he was adopted by an American couple when he was 12 years old and raised with love. He also mentioned that he started writing his first novel on a website during high school. Back at the editorial team, they were puzzled because Sin-yook hadn't had a chance to say goodbye to them. However, when they opened his laptop, they found a farewell video he had prepared for his friends on the screen. After Poon-ho became the deputy CEO and Sin-yook was revealed as a writer, Ju-young felt even more lonely because Jin would also be leaving the editorial team the next day. Meanwhile, Sung-joon received a call from the head office asking him to return. Later on, Sung-joon met Jin and invited her to come to New York. Jin said she needed some time to think about it. In the evening, on her way home, she finally crossed paths with Sinyu. When Sinyu hugged her, Jin immediately remembered all the wonderful moments they had shared at the most office. The following day, a fairy tale writer invited Jin to join her team, and Jin gladly accepted the offer, showing her determination to pursue her dream of becoming a writer of children's fairy tales. Seeing how happy Jin was, Sung-joon decided to postpone their wedding to the next year, even though he had already proposed to her with a ring. Afterward, Jin packed her things to live with the other writers. She was about to embark on her career as a fairy tale writer, which was tough for Hori to accept. However, Hori understood that she needed to support Jin's dreams, even if it meant they would be apart. Long story short, Sung-joon met Jin and told her that he had to go to the United States the next day. They decided to take a break from their relationship. After the breakup, Jin received a warm welcome from her writing team, and it made her happy because she became the youngest writer. Jin was thrilled because they were working together on a fairy tale storyline that would be published soon. As time passed, Jin shared her daily life with Sung-joon through video calls. Meanwhile, Hori decided to continue studying hospitality to excel in her future job. Occasionally, Hori visited Jin at her workplace and noticed that Jin seemed much happier as a writer. Jin confirmed this, saying that her current work had given her a fresh start. After meeting with Hori, Jin tried to call Sung-joon, but she couldn't reach him. This made Jin anxious and distracted at work, leaving her friends confused by her change in behavior. Initially, Jin worried that something bad had happened to Sung-joon. Unexpectedly, he returned to South Korea because he missed Jin deeply. He couldn't bear the long-distance relationship any longer and had decided to stay in South Korea. He even prepared a house and found a job there. Surprisingly, Sung-joon rejoined the MOST team as the editor-in-chief, and Ju-yeon became his deputy. Meanwhile, Rara chose to quit her job because she was going to marry a model. When Jin got back home, she was surprised to discover that Sung-joon had been staying at her house for a while. This upset her because her family hadn't told her about it from the beginning. During dinner, Jin gave her father a savings book and hoped he would accept the money to buy a new printing machine. At first, her father refused, thinking that Jin would have many needs before the wedding. However, Sung-joon tried to convince Jin's father that he would take care of all his daughter's needs. Meanwhile, Sinyu's life was full of happiness. He continued to work as a novelist and traveled the world in search of inspiration. A few days later, Jin and her team's fairy tale book was officially published. It was Jin's first work, and she felt incredibly proud of it. Meanwhile, Sung-joon surprised his employees at the MOST editorial team with wedding invitations, as no one had known about his relationship with Jin. Long story short, Hori took Jin to a park to capture a farewell moment, as Jin would soon be getting married. At that time, Hori also shared that she had achieved her job at a hotel through hard work. After celebrating their farewell and Hori's success, they took a photo together to remember the moment. Finally, the wedding day of Jin and Sung-joon arrived. Although they looked nervous, they walked down the aisle with smiles, filled with happiness. Meanwhile, Sinyu returned to South Korea after completing his novel. Some time later, Jin read the novel and discovered that it was dedicated to her. The series ends by showing Sung-joon picking up his daughter on her way home from school. The series ends. The moral lesson from this series is if you want to find your true love, just hide in the closet. For sure they'll find and marry you.